The gate that portrays the narrative begins simply. No fanfare, no grand introduction. Just a sentence, quiet, almost casual, dropped into history like a stone into deep water. A rich man was dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day. And we read it, and we nod, and we move on, because there is nothing alarming at first glance. He is not described as violent. He is not called corrupt. He doesn't appear committing crimes. He carries no weapon. He speaks no cruelty, at least none that is recorded. He just lives well. Purple and fine linen. In the ancient world, purple dye was extracted from sea snails, thousands of them, to produce a few ounces of pigment. It was not a color. It was a declaration. It said, I belong to another category of existence. It said, the rules of scarcity do not govern me. It said, the weight that crushes others does not touch my shoulders. And fine linen, not rough cloth, not common fabric, but the kind that breathes, the kind that drapes with elegance, the kind that feels against the skin, like the world is cooperating with your comfort. And he feasted splendidly every day, not on feast days, not on Sabbaths, not on special occasions. Every day, the abundance was not an event. The abundance was the atmosphere. It was the air he breathed. It was so ordinary to him that he had ceased to perceive it as extraordinary. That is its own kind of blindness, not the blindness of closed eyes, but the blindness of eyes so accustomed to the light that they cannot see what lives in the shadow. The contrast, but then, as always in the truest stories, but then, and there was also a beggar named Lazarus, covered with sores, who lay at the rich man's gate. Notice this. The story doesn't bring in Lazarus from a distance. It doesn't set him in another province, another neighborhood, another social world entirely where the rich man could legitimately claim, I never knew, I never saw, I had no way of knowing. No, Lazarus was at the gate, the entrance, the threshold between one world and another. The rich man, to leave his house, had to pass by Lazarus. The rich man, to return to his house, had to pass by Lazarus. His servants, coming and going, they passed by Lazarus. His guests, arriving for the daily feast, they passed by Lazarus. Lazarus was not hidden. He was not invisible. He had not blended into the architecture. He was there, bodily, visibly, undeniably there, covered with sores. The text is not gentle about this. It doesn't say unwell or infirm or troubled. It says covered with sores, the kind of poverty that has written itself onto body, that cannot be politely ignored or aesthetically managed or categorized away. His suffering was legible. Anyone who looked could read it. And the dogs came and licked his sores. In that world, dogs were not pets. They were scavengers. They moved through the margins. They belonged to no one. And so, in the great taxonomy of that world, Lazarus and the dogs occupied the same stratum, the unattended, the unclaimed, the ones the system had let fall through its hands. The desire he desired. That word, desired. Hunger that becomes longing. Longing that becomes ache. Ache that becomes the background music of every waking moment. What did he desire? Not the purple robe. Not the fine linen. Not the feast itself. The dishes, the wine, the company. The warmth of laughter in a full room. He desired the crumbs that fell from the rich man's table. The crumbs. What falls from a table like that? What falls from a table where feasting happens every day? Where abundance is the baseline? Where food is not a scarcity to be rationed, but a pleasantry to be enjoyed? The crumbs that fall from a table like that could feed a man. And that is what Lazarus wanted. Not a seat at the table. Not dignity. Not recognition. Not friendship. Not a hand extended in greeting. Just the crumbs. The accidental overflow. The involuntary excess. The fraction that didn't even require a decision. Just a slight relaxation of the grip. Just an acknowledgement that what was falling unnoticed to the floor could, instead, fall into the hand of the man at the gate. And even this smallest thing, he did not receive. The silence, this is where the story becomes most devastating. The parable does not tell us that the rich man looked at Lazarus and felt contempt. It does not tell us he drove him away. It does not say he called the guards. It does not say he laughed or mocked or spat. The parable tells us nothing. It simply moves on. And that silence is indictment. Because there are many ways to harm a person. You can strike them. You can steal from them. You can lie about them. You can oppress them with force, with law, with power. These are violent sins, and they leave marks. But there is another sin, a quieter sin, a sin that leaves no fingerprints, no bruises, no evidence in any court. It is the sin of the unnoticed, the sin of the walk past, the sin of the arrangements that are made in such a way that the suffering of the neighbor never quite rises to the level of inconvenience. The rich man did not need to hate Lazarus. He simply needed to not see him. He simply needed to allow the comfort of his world to insulate him sufficiently from the discomfort of another's reality. And this, apparently, he managed day after day, feast after feast. Purple robe, fine linen, splendid table. And at the gate, a man covered in sores, wanting crumbs. The reversal then, as all things do. Time moved. The beggar died, and the angels carried him to Abraham's side. Read that again. The beggar died, and the angels came. Not soldiers, not officials, not a formal delegation. Angels, as if heaven had been watching all along. As if, in the arithmetic of eternity, Lazarus was known, personally, precisely, by name, in a way that the gatekeepers of this world had refused to know him. He was carried to Abraham's side, to the place of honor, to the feast that does not end, to the table where no one falls at the gate. The rich man also died and was buried. His death, which in this world would have been attended by mourners, by ceremonies, by the full weight of social ritual honoring his importance, is dispatched in 4 words. He was buried, and in the place where he found himself, he looked up and he saw Lazarus, far away, with Abraham, and he called out, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in agony in this flame." The geometry of the request is arresting. He is asking for what Lazarus asked for. He is asking for the smallest thing, not rescue, not full relief, not a complete reversal, just the tip of a finger, just a drop of water, just the barest margin of grace. And Abraham answers him with sorrow, not cruelty, not triumph, not satisfaction, but sorrow. "Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, while Lazarus received bad things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. And besides all this, between us and you a great chasm has been set in place, so that those who want to go from here to you cannot, nor can anyone cross over from there to us." The chasm, not a wall built in fury, not a punishment administered in wrath. A chasm, as if the gap that existed at the gate, the gap that the rich man chose daily not to bridge, had simply continued, had hardened into permanence, had become the geography of eternity. The distance he maintained in life became the distance that defined his death. The brothers, he had 5 brothers. He thought of them. Even then, in that place, he thought of them. And there is something almost human about it. Something that reaches toward us across the millennia, that even in his anguish he loved. "Then I beg you, Father, send Lazarus to my family, for I have 5 brothers. Let him warn them, so that they will not come to this place of torment." Abraham said to him, "They have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them." "No, Father Abraham," he said, "but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent." He said to him, "If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be convinced even if someone rises from the dead." And there, in those final words, the parable breaks its own frame, because someone did rise from the dead, the one who told the story, and the world heard, and some believed, and some stood at their windows in their purple and fine linen, and watched the poor man at the gate, and went back inside. The question in the parable does not ask us to be poor. It does not romanticize suffering. It does not suggest that wealth is inherently wicked or that comfort is a sin. It asks something harder. It asks, who is at your gate? Not metaphorically, not as a theological abstraction, but literally, who is the person you pass on the way to where you are going? Whose suffering has become so familiar to your eyes that it has stopped registering as suffering? Whose name, like Lazarus' name? Do you not know? Because you have not stopped long enough to ask. The rich man was not condemned for having a feast. He was condemned for failing to notice that the feast had an outside, that abundance, real, legitimate, even gratefully received abundance, exists inside a world that also contains Lazarus, that also contains the gate, that also contains the space between. The question is not whether you are at the table. The question is whether you know what is happening at your gate. The name, there is one more thing. The rich man, the one in fine linen, the one who feasted every day, the one whose death filled the street with mourners. He has no name in this story. Lazarus has a name. Lazarus. From the Hebrew, Elazar, God has helped. The one the world forgot was the one God remembered. The one with no place at the table was the one whose name was written elsewhere. The one lying at the gate, covered in sores, desired even by the dogs, was the one carried by angels. His name was known. In the most important register of all, his name was known. This is the parable, not a comfortable one, not one that lets us sit quietly in our fine linen and feel at peace. A parable that walks us to the gate and asks us to look, really look, and then asks us what we will do with what we see. If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be convinced even if someone rises from the dead. But here we are, listening. The question is, what will we do with what we have heard?